If you own Prehistoric Planet Pack DLC, you can make plastic out of nothing. It goes like this: Gnits, which don't need food or anything at all, feed Lura plant, which makes amber, which is then melted into resin, which we then feed to the polymer press, which makes plastic. In this video we will build the most efficient Gnit and Lura farm, and then I will share with you a method to efficiently convert amber into resin and make plastic, while cooling your base at the same time. Kicking things off with a Gnit and Lura farm, my goal is to create a free self-sustaining constant supply of amber that you can easily scale, no matter how much plastic you need. For the baseline, let's assume that we want to make 300 kilograms of plastic per cycle, which is the amount that one polymer press can make per cycle if it doesn't stop. This requires 500 kilograms of resin, and to make 500 kilograms of resin, considering that we will be melting amber and the efficiency of the conversion is 80%, we will need 625 kilograms of amber every cycle. A self-harvesting Lura plant makes 264 kilograms of amber every 16 cycles, so that's 16.5 kilograms of amber per cycle, and so we would need 38 Lura plants to make this much amber, and 19 Gnits to feed them. What if we harvested amber as soon as Luras had digested their prey? Would 19 Lura plants be enough then? Well, no, because Gnits reproduce every 11.5 cycles and die before reaching age 12, which means that even in ideal conditions where you were harvesting Luras as soon as they're available, all your Gnits would die mere seconds before the Luras had digested their parents and opened their maws. So the way to account for this is to double the amount of Luras, but it's not a problem at all since it only takes a bit of time to get enough seeds. Also, this plays right into our hands as we don't need duplicate labor to harvest the Lura plants and can just let them drop the amber on their own, which takes 4 more cycles, and so every Lura will need food once every 16 cycles. It sounds like long term the concept could break, since 11.5 and 16 are incommensurate and might desynchronize, leading to a generation of Gnits that dies before being eaten, right? Well, no. I made this rough Excel table where you can see that this will never happen and this farm will run perfectly and indefinitely, as there will always be a Lura plant ready to eat. So we know that Luras can eat any flying critter, so why Gnits? Well, Gnits are easily the best choice for this, not only because they are there with you on the prehistoric planet, but for a multitude of other reasons. Let's compare them to other flying critters. First off, beetas. A beehive produces a new bee every cycle, for free, without inputs or duplicate labor required, so they sound like a great deal, except for the fact that Lura plants can only grow in temperatures above 10 degrees Celsius, while beetas die within 5 seconds of touching anything above 10. If you made an insulated room for the beehive and planted Luras at the very exit just like I did here with Gnits, you would not be able to control their paths and it's likely many would be dying before they reached Lura plants. So not only does it require cooling, it's also just incredibly finicky, though definitely possible if you really wanted to. It just won't be a reliable source of resin in the end. Mimicas too sound good on paper but are actually inefficient. You might think that on top of feeding Luras they will also pollinate them, but unless you have more Mimicas than Lura plants, they will rarely get to pollinate anything before getting eaten. Even then, a pollinated Lura only means that you will need less Lura plants to produce the same amount of amber, but there is no limit to how many Luras you can grow as they don't care for room sizes and they drop plenty of seeds. If you wanted to have a consistent supply of resin for one polymer press, you would need 12 Mimicas to feed 38 Luras. Since you can't grow them wild in an efficient room, each of them will require 10 kilograms of dirt every cycle. If you have free 120 kilograms of dirt per cycle and 12 Mimicas in your world, then sure, go ahead. It works out pretty compact, but I don't see it as a long-term solution because there are other, better uses for dirt. And lastly, shine bugs. A new shine bug is born once every 20 cycles and they feel cramped when they're in less than 12 tiles of space, compared to Gnit's 4. So you would have to build a much bigger ranch for them just to feed the same amount of Luras. And puffs are even worse. It takes 60 cycles to go through one reproduction cycle for them. Gnits, on the other hand, are free, easy to breed, and their reproduction cycle is close to the reproduction cycle of the plants. All you have to do is ensure that they lay an egg before being fed to the Luras. Okay, so we agree that Gnits are the best long-term choice that doesn't need any inputs. So how do we make enough of them? Easy. Just take any wild animal on your map, wrangle it, and put it into a room with a tile of water on the floor. Gnit larvas need 350 kilograms of water to not suffocate, and they will flop into water like pacus once they are born, so even one tile of water is enough for this. If a gnit stings an animal, its reproduction is boosted so it lays 2 eggs before dying, and the animal itself only suffers a -1 happiness debuff, which we don't care about since they're wild anyway. An animal can be stung only twice per cycle, so it's best to have a few. Once we set this up, we can forget about it and start building our farm. We will be able to come back in some 10 cycles to gather the gnits. It's best to gather them during the larva phase in fish traps because you don't want to release them into our build and have them fly away before your duplicant has left the room. For the sake of efficiency, aesthetics, and space preservation, I have settled on a modular design that can host 5 gnits and 10 luras, and that can be easily expanded in case you decide you need more plastic in your life. After all, it costs us nothing to increase the amount of luras and gnits. We will build a 1x4 room for each gnit, with a door on top that only opens when an egg has been laid. Don't make these rooms bigger than that because your gnits will only have a short time to find Lura plants before they die of old age. And don't build the doors yet. Of course you can build the rooms out of any tile you want, I just like the look of the wood tiles. Once you have these shafts ready, put some liquid vents above each and add pipes in such a way that they spread the liquid roughly equally and connect them to a liquid pump. We want to have anywhere between 350 and 1000 kilograms of water per room, that is at most 55 degrees Celsius. If you build the pipes like I did, you will need to pipe anywhere from 2.2 to 3 tons of water. Once that's done, you can dismantle the vents and continue building the farm. Same as with Gnit rooms, you want to make Lura rooms as short as possible, 2 tiles high. This size is perfect for a conveyor and a sweeper, which can reach all 10 plants. Also, if there was a Lura plant here, then it would just drop amber into the room underneath. So now we can finally build the doors, let the conveyor loader accept everything, and plant as many Lura seeds as we have. We can catch the Gnit larvas and release them via fish release one by one. Once you release a larva, if it's one of the outermost rooms, remove the fish release, add 2 critter sensors, and connect them through an AND gate to the door like this. Set the upper critter sensor to above 0 eggs and the lower one to above 0 critters, and seal the room. If you're releasing into any other room, one sensor for above 0 eggs is enough. The reason we're checking whether there's both an egg and a gnit in the outermost rooms is because we have Lura plants directly over the door. If we only had one sensor for when there's an egg in the room, then these doors would stay open for 2 whole cycles, increasing the risk that amber falls through. There's only a few things to keep in mind. One is that you cannot leave any open tiles because not only will your gnits escape, gas might be introduced in pressures that your plants might not like, so always keep it closed. Second, you need to make sure the temperature outside the rooms is not colder than 10 degrees or hotter than 55. If it is, insulate the rooms. And finally, there always needs to be power for the sweepers to work. If there isn't, you might lose some of the amber on the sides because the sweeper won't have the time to take it and it will fall through. Otherwise, this design is perfect because the sweeper can reach exactly 10 plants, gnits can all be at different stages of life, always get eaten before reaching old age, it is fully self-contained and self-sustaining, only takes 715 kilograms of refined metal to build, and can be expanded at will. As always, I will leave the blueprint in the description. One such farm will make 165 kilograms of amber, enough for 0.165 polymer presses if you use plant pulverizer to make resin, in which case you'll need 6 farms to run polymer press 99% of the time, plus duplicant labor and a way to remove the heat from the press. If you melt the amber instead, you'll need 4 farms to supply 1 polymer press, creating 300 kilograms of plastic per cycle with a bit of amber left over. Plus, you'll create a lot of cooling that you can use to cool your entire base and then some. The only requirement is having enough power to run the aqua tuner, plus some steel. Here's the design I am using. It's by no means perfect, but it does the job well enough to be able to run the press 99% of the time, hands off. All we need to achieve that is to take any steam room that we already have and that doesn't have a room underneath, replace whatever tiles we have with metal tiles built out of highly conductive metal like gold or copper, add a 2 tile high room underneath, vacuum it, put in a pump and a hydro sensor set to 10 kilograms. Then slap a polymer press in a corner of the steam room, add a conveyor loader and a sweeper for all the plastic and fossils, and cover the floor in Tempshift plates. Next, we will run conveyor rails through the metal tiles, but pay attention, I will have a gap between the fourth and third tiles from the right. This is very important, as we will be putting two conveyor bridges. The first bridge will have the white input on the fourth tile from the end, and the second bridge will be reversed and will have the white input at the very last tile. If you mess up and make one continuous rail line, it won't work. The first bridge is needed so the conveyor keeps moving, and the second bridge is needed because the conveyor moves solids in some kind of boxes, and if things melt inside these boxes they will just stay empty, taking up the space on the conveyor. The only way to delete them is to create this double bridge setup. And there we have it. As long as you provide enough heat for your aqua tuner to constantly run, you'll get to some temperature equilibrium where the aqua tuner and polymer press will be heating the steam room and the amber will be cooling it. Just keep an eye on the temps before this equilibrium is reached, as you don't want it to run too hot or too cold. The reason this works is because whenever amber melts inside a conveyor belt, the resin flows downwards while fossil is put on the top. If you put a second layer of metal tiles, it won't work anymore, and the resin will flow to the top instead. And by the way, amber melts at 98 degrees, not 95 degrees as it says here. I don't know if it's a bug or a typo, but keep that in mind. Now, what if you don't already have a steam room? Copy these layouts and build everything in the middle room out of steel, metal tiles out of copper gold, vacuum bottom room, make sure that the middle room only has steam or water in it and no other gas or liquid. Then pipe some liquid through the aqua tuner and don't forget to set the liquid pipe thermosensors to that liquid's freezing point plus 15 degrees. This way you can use the water in the aqua tuner loop to cool your base or your industries and melt the amber through the conveyor rails. I have the steam turbine here only as a failsafe if things get too hot or there is too much steam in the room and you have to remove it. It's not necessary if your steam doesn't get out of hand. Just make sure to heat the steam to at least 100 degrees before you send in the amber, and once you do, keep an eye on the temps until they reach an equilibrium. It's tricky to determine how much heat you need and how big of a room you can sustain, considering that the temps of the amber and the aqua tuner loop will be different in each individual case, so I personally just figured it out empirically. As a reference point, I was able to get this polymer press to run 99% of the time, melting 27 degree amber with these 4 kilns, at the equilibrium temperature of 122 to 127 degrees. 13 metal tiles were making too much resin and 11 were not making enough. Before I settled on this 12 tile design, I tried it with 9, for which I had to use 3 kilns at 100% uptime just to keep up with the cooling that amber was providing, and this allowed me to produce 240 kilograms of plastic. So roughly speaking, since a kiln produces 20 kDTU per second, you would need to find something that produces 80 kDTU to sufficiently heat up a 3x12 steam room with a constantly running polymer press, but I don't know man, you do the maths if you want to, I'm out. Check out my other videos and share your designs in the comments.